So welcome to the Q&A. And so I'm just going to mute everybody for now, but then I'll look at Wendy's questions in the group and then we'll take it from there. But feel free to kind of, when I say jump in, I do lose my track of thought if you kind of just interrupt me, but you know, at a reasonable spot, kind of dive in. So good questions though, Wendy. Thank you for asking some. So general question. I wondered what of your thoughts on getting certified as an astrologer. Do you feel one should go down this path to be recognized as a professional astrologer, or can you still practice without certification? There is no hard and fast rule on this, but she gets confused because some people have certification and others don't. And I see amongst the astrologer field, there seems a push towards this. Thanks. Okay. Well, my answer is mixed in a way too, because I do think the astrological community needs some kind of, I hate to say the word regulation, but needs to have some standards. So I do think it's a good idea to get some kind of certification at some point. Do I think you need to do that to get started? No. And who kind of regulates the certifying bodies? I mean, I kind of have a certificate of sorts because I went through all 3 levels with my main teacher, Mara Delbose, who was an apprentice of Stephen Forrest, and I did everything in her classes one-on-one for 2 years. So I am a level 3 certified Mara Delbose evolutionary astrologer. But I am actually going to, that's why Maurice Fernandez persuaded me to stay with for part 2 of iAstrologer in October, because I think I am going to go for the Organization of Professional Astrologers certification, which will take me quite some time because it's all done in person and all done by these peer groups. I've tried to suggest they move to doing some online, but there was resistance to it. So I'm actually going to talk to Maurice about it when I'm in Arizona to say, come on, it's the 21st century. Surely we can have some peer group certification things online. It doesn't have to involve great expense, because that's my problem with some of the recognized, if you like, professional qualifications. They are really, really expensive. And astrology is a thing that many people, like I had been learning it, you know, kind of properly, as I call it, from 1989, and I didn't start charging for it till 2012. I think if we insist that you can only be called a professional astrologer if you are certified from certain places, then that's problematic, because there is no kind of board to oversee those places. So short answer is yes, I think you can practice without certification. But also, yes, I think if you keep it up and want to become a, what's the word? A professional astrologer who really kind of grows their practice and business beyond more than a little hobby, really, or more than just, you know, small fry, then you probably would want to pursue some kind of certification at some point. But I wouldn't let it stop you getting started. Does that help, Wendy, seeing as you're there? There is the difficulty, of course, that, sorry, I'll let you speak in a second. There is the difficulty, of course, as well, that who says it's professional, and there's different kinds of astrology, and who says what's right and what isn't.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do see that. And I mean, my thoughts are too that, eventually I could understand why you might go for certification.
Mm.
Yeah, there is a lot of people that, well, a few people that I've maybe been interested into doing, further deeper studies definitely seem to lead towards encouraging you to be certified at the end of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And
I mean, I'm still so new, even though like I've been sort of passionate about and looking at astrology every day for about 2 years now, but that's nothing in the scheme of everything.
it is. Some people pick it up sooner than others, and there's always more to learn. So
I've done a lot of just like listening to podcasts, or a bit sort of.
yeah,
I've taken it half seriously, but I'm just getting to that point where I want to take it more seriously. Like next year, I was looking at studies, and even in Australia, there's not many actual certified teachers
there
to
is.
be able to teach you.
And
When I started looking, there's only probably half a dozen.
who
Um,
certified them? Maurice Fernandez's course is one of the top ones, but who actually said he was certified to teach a certified course? So
yeah,
it's kind of difficult. There are smaller course certifications you can take. One I'm actually taking now. I started it and then got my book deal, so I had to shelve it. I'm actually taking through the Astrology University. I'm taking the Pluto School with Mark Jones to
oh
deepen
yeah, I
my
saw
knowledge.
that. Yeah,
And now that was that was less than $400. And I will pay the extra at the end to have a session with Mark to get certified in his particular Pluto school.
so he does do that.
But I don't know if it's like there's so many certifications. I think it's a good idea to get a thorough training, but this question of certified as an astrologer, I think that held me back for many, many years, actually, because I kind of felt like you had to get a degree in astrology to be an astrologer, to practice at all. And it's just
Oh,
not.
there was one lady I was inquiring with that seems to be like the one you go to in Melbourne.
Uh-huh.
When she got back to me, if I did it sort of a mix of on campus or however you want to call that, and online, it was going to take 4.5 years,
Oh my
and
God.
it's like $10,000. You
Yeah,
know,
I know.
it
Oh,
comes very.
Maurice's is about $5,000. And,
And I'd love to do his, but for me in Australia, that also means going
it's
to America and all those costs.
exactly, it's just too far. I mean, you can do a lot of his online too,
Yeah,
but
you can, but twice I'd have to go to America.
well, it might be worth kind of starting. Look, if you like the deeper stuff, the soul stuff and the Pluto stuff, if that is your thing, it
I
might be
do.
it might be an idea to look at Marks, because it's all done online, and it's self-study until it comes to the actual certification session, and that's done
Yeah,
by like Skype
yeah.
or something. So I don't
We have
think you
another
have to
lady
spend
that her name's
10,000.
exactly. We have another lady. Her name's Maggie Kerr. I don't know if you've heard of her.
No.
She learnt from Alan Oaken,
Hmm.
who I also like. He's a very wise soul.
Yeah.
Um, lives in Bali, and she is about to do an online course. I'd say it's going to start next year. So I don't know what her fees are. I mean, I understand that these are people that have been learning for many years, and I understand why they have to charge a certain amount. Just when I'm a small fry,
I know.
it
Oh, well, and
becomes
so
a
am
bit
I really
difficult.
still, it's like I can't
Yeah,
afford $10,000 just like that. So.
but I mean, you constantly do little courses. Like I've
Yeah.
done yours, and I did Adam Summers' 12-part interpretation course or whatever he calls it, and
Yeah. And I'm actually not going to offer certificates on this, because I think to do that I would have to have some kind of test kind of thing, or insist that I get a reading or something to.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Yep.
that's the difficult thing as well, because I did that with my teacher Maridel. We had, I had to do a couple of pretend reading sessions with her.
Yep.
It felt so unreal doing that. It didn't feel, I'm like, can't I just get somebody and do a reading with them, and then you listen to that with their permission? Because it didn't feel right, just
Oh,
doing
yeah.
pretend reading. It was like, well,
Mm.
but I guess that's because of how I work. I don't know. It's yeah, so it's a difficult subject, but the short answer is no, I don't think you have to be certified to start practicing. Just don't
Excuse
claim
me.
to be if you're not.
Yeah. I listened to astrology podcasts, Anne Ortley and
Oh yeah, yeah.
Chris Brennan after yesterday, and I
Mhm.
listened to the one that you referred to, the counselling. Both were really good, and I do agree that you do need, it would be wise to have a component of counselling.
Yeah.
Um, I did. I didn't complete a social work degree, but I did half of it, and did counselling subjects in that. So I do feel like I have basic counselling skills. But anyway, Anne Ortley was saying that she really believes in certification, because her point was you wouldn't go to a doctor or a lawyer who wasn't certified, and
Mm.
she went down that path. I can see the reasoning behind it. Yeah.
I can too, but I think the world needs more astrologers, and I think it would, because there is no one recognized path. You can't get student
Yeah.
loans. You can't, it's not like a college degree. And, you can't, there's just not the path to it where you can get scholarships and things like that. So
Mm,
I think we can't be as hard and fast. I know Anne Ortley really does agree with it, but she came out of a really well-paying job and had the
yeah.
money to pay for her qualifications. Well,
Yeah.
we're not all that.
Yeah.
So, and I love Anne, don't get me wrong. But OPA's a really good organisation with that. And don't they have an Australian satellite?
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, so I could have a look. I mean, it's not something I need to do right now, well, obviously, but it was just something that I'd thought about.
But I think it's perhaps all the more reason to push OPA to do something like they do with their peer counselling sessions, um,
Okay.
but through Zoom. I think there's no
Yeah.
reason. I approached it at one point with them, but not with Maurice, with somebody else. I can't remember, one of the women who's on the board, who's really old. And she was like, oh, no, it's really valuable to be in person. And I can see it is, but I feel like
Yeah.
Zoom feels like you're in person if you
Yeah.
insist everybody's on video and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for those of us that don't live in major cities and have access to such things, it makes it so much easier. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'll actually kind of let you all know how that conversation goes when I have it with with
Well,
Maurice.
that'd be good.
Yeah. Because
Thanks.
it would still be, it would still cost money, obviously,
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
but it'd be a lot cheaper. And it's because it's more peer group certification. You've kind of done your study and you just kind of have to show that you know your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Thanks.
suits people that study on their own. You're welcome. Yep. Okay, so the next one was about, not really up for doing a description of a chart yet. That was you, Wendy, but nobody else has done it either. As I said last week, you know, I think I got mixed up with number of calls, but I'm going to do two more anyway. I think you could probably get in 14 instead of 12, but that's all right. I don't care. As long as I'm done before I go to England. Once I go to England, I won't be around to give feedback. And even if the group's still open, I won't be giving feedback because I've got a lot on after that. And, I'm not asking for an actual reading, even if you just show the chart and just say, I think this is significant, even if you don't give an
Okay.
interpretation at this point. Just a list of aspects that you probably would talk about, just to show that you're seeing what
Yeah.
the aspects, even if you don't feel confident enough
Okay.
to do the reading. Yeah. And so your last question in the group before we just go to open Q&A is the degrees. Now, I don't really talk about the degrees that much in readings. I do it more in my writing. I talk about, um, the Sabian symbols or the Chandra symbols. I do see anything on the 0 degrees as pretty critical, or the last degrees, and there are critical degrees that I don't really use. So I don't really interpret them. I wouldn't get too wrapped up in it. If it's
I
on,
thought of it more from helping you understand the way you might interpret something to the person, not so much being
oh,
specific to them, but like if you saw, like for me, I have my ascendant on 0 degrees Cancer,
uh-huh.
Gemini Cancer cusp. Well, I don't know, that's probably not how you say that,
No, but
uh, but 0 degrees.
yeah.
And if I saw that on someone's, that would help me understand more of that person by being 0 degrees?
Um, I think I would probably mention that it being a 0 degree, they're kind of very baby cancer, if you like. I would probably
Yeah,
describe it as that. I would probably say they would
baby.
display, but that's the same with any cusp kind of thing. They kind of display traits of, the previous sign and the sign after. But 0 degree is an important degree of any, if any planets on it, I think, particularly if it's on the cardinal signs. So I probably would note that, because if it's 0 Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, then it's on the world axis, which is, the equinoxes and the solstices, and real turning point. I kind of would note it, but really,
Yeah,
it does make a difference, I think. But you've usually got so much to talk about that I wouldn't bother
yeah.
focusing on it unless it jumps
Well,
out.
I've sometimes heard people, sorry, I've heard
It's
people
fine.
or astrologers say, when it's especially at the late degrees, like 29, or that's a very not, I don't know, powerful, but strong.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. The 0 and the 29 are, of most signs, are really powerful. So you might, if you've not got a lot to talk about, you might want to talk about it.
Okay.
It's not something I really talk about.
Yep. That's fine. Thanks.
Yeah. If you go in, but the critical degrees is really interesting all of its own. I'm just looking them up for you, actually, because each sign has critical degrees, apparently. So classic critical degrees are 13, 0, 13, and 26 of cardinal signs. But it gets too complicated. You've got plenty enough to look at. But the
Yeah.
29th degree of any sign is called the anaretic degree. It's powerful because you've got your accumulated power of that whole sign, really, if at the 29th degree.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so that's the questions. Oh, hang on, I didn't see the chat. Oh, yeah, we talked about the certification. Wendy did ask in the chat, sorry, I didn't see it, with an association, or what if an individual teaches and they offer a certification? Yeah. Yeah, so we kind of covered that, I think, unless there's any more questions on it. Kimberly's hoping to do a transit reading on her niece who is bringing her son, the one that almost died in birth, to an intensive therapy program for cerebral palsy. But with astro.com, it seems she can only get a transit reading for one day. Yeah, I know. Well, that's why I think if you're going to do astrology, you need software. I hate to say it. And I'm sorry, I can't do printouts for everybody's, You know, there comes a point where if you want to do astrology, you have to, you know, to practice it, you need to start doing, you need to invest. But, you know, if you got, do you have Time Passages, the app, Kimberly? It's not the same. You can't get a transit printout, a list, but it does give you more extensive kind of dates. You do have something like that. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say there's so many. Astro.com, I do find a bit limited. Well, it does amazing things, and then in some ways it's limited. So, but yeah. So if you could find a way to do it, that would be great. Or using your the book. You know, the one I mean, with all the transits. The ephemeris. The ephemeris might just help as well. Some people can do it completely from an ephemeris. After all, we didn't always have computer programs that do this. You know, you might be able to see that. Yeah. Use that. Yeah. It doesn't have to be solar fire, or, you know, I just don't have them all. There's always a way, and it doesn't matter if you're not exact. You know, that in fact, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. If you're doing it and you don't have the dynamic report facility in some way, it really doesn't matter when you're doing a reading if you don't give the exact day that the transit is exact, because unless that's for a timing prediction with the faster moving planets, I prefer not to give an exact day for the big soul changing transits, like, you know, of Pluto, Neptune, and all those things, because then people just focus on that one day. And as we know, these things kind of build and then fade. So I don't worry too much about, well, it's got to be exactly 3 degrees before and 2 after, or, you know, I just kind of give a range and talk about it building and fading, because otherwise people really, that brings me to kind of ethics, and you know, that one I shared was really interesting. We do have to be careful what we seed in people's minds if we're doing a reading. We have to be careful of the language that we're using. This goes to counselling skills. Now, and Wendy, you mentioned them. Now, I've never had any formal counselling training, but it's kind of in my makeup that I'm kind of a natural kind of therapist, counsellor. I'm a very good listener. Not saying I do everything perfectly. And I've learned from some mistakes, but I'm really mindful of what language I use when I'm doing a reading, what I put in people's minds. When I'm looking ahead, I'm really careful not to put fear in people's hearts. I don't want to be a fairy godmother either and say things are worrying. So I'll give you one example. I was doing a reading for somebody, a friend of mine actually, who emigrated to Australia, and we were on, and it was meant to be kind of a bit of a fun thing. They actually won a reading, her and her husband, on my Facebook page. So, but I was sitting there looking at the chart and we're chatting, and I actually cannot remember exactly what I saw. I could go back and look, but it was something in her 6th house, and I was a bit like, warning bells, warning bells. So I just kind of gently said, you know, if you have any symptoms, you know, you might want to get checked out, or, you know, you might want to get a full medical, you know, there might be something a bit off balance. I just could see something. So I was really careful how I said it, but kind of tried to encourage her to go to the doctors. Well, it turns out she'd been having this ache, and she went to the doctors and she had a big tumor. Not malignant, but big, and damaging nerves and things. And, you know, because she heeded this kind of warning bell that I could see in the chart, she did go and get checked out and ended up having the surgery to have it removed before it got any bigger. Now, she's still having problems with it, and she's had to have follow-up surgeries. But the fact is, if she'd ignored her symptoms, it would have got a lot worse, and because it was growing quite quickly. So I think you get the idea that you have to, I didn't want to say, oh my God, I sense something really bad in your chart and you really should go to the doctors. You have to really be careful and mindful how you put things into people's mind and what you say to them and how they say it, how you say it, and the words. And even for good things, don't kind of be fairy godmotherish. And even though I'm Miss Positive, I'm more in positive in the way of how I try to encourage people to respond to things rather than saying everything's going to be wonderful and you're going to get this and you're going to be so abundant and you're going to have a wonderful life. So be mindful both ways, not fairy godmotherish and not fear-based. So, okay, there's my rant about that one too, about ethics. The other one that came up in that podcast that I shared in the group, if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, was children. I did a reading one time for a baby, and I offered to do it for somebody who's in this group, and I never actually did it, so I'm sorry, Jennifer. And I've decided I don't want to do babies' charts. Excuse my dog, that's the neighbour's dog setting them off. Again, it's what you put in parents' minds. If the parents listen to it, if it's a young child, you have to be careful what you're saying about the child. You don't want to kind of say this is they're going to be like and that's it and things, and the parents try and change them, or parents try and mold them to what they are. So I've decided I don't want to do children's charts anymore. I started off by doing teenagers kind of career direction charts. I can talk about it a little bit. I don't know if I'm an expert about that, but I'll talk about it. But I would do teenagers' career direction charts again and things like that. But again, I think the deep soul stuff that this kind of astrology is more suited for adults. I also don't like doing them as gifts unless I'm sure the recipient is wanting them. Because I've had a couple of people buy gift certificates when I did them one year, and their friends just never used them, and I hate doing that. I'd had the money for nothing, and you kind of think, well, that's their loss, but no, it just doesn't fit with me. And I think if people don't really choose into it, then I don't really want to do the reading. So house systems. Have I had? Oh, let me answer that one first, then I'll go to house. I've had one. I've not had many challenging client readings. No. I had one. I used to do a Hecate report, and I had one girl come back and say, that's just not me at all. You got it wrong. I did it on the app. And everybody else had raved about them. And to be quite honest, I really think the time was wrong. I have had one skeptic who bought a reading from me, but she's totally converted now. She was like, how did you know all that stuff about me? And so that was nice. But I kind of put this invisible wall. Yeah, I know, it is good. I kind of put this invisible wall up for things like that. I don't really want to convince skeptics that astrology works. I don't see that as my job. Yeah. So quickly, house symptoms. Okay. Well, I think actually all house systems work. Is that a cop-out? I prefer porphyry because the dates on my house cusps with porphyry have always worked. Whole house works really well for some things. I think you just have to choose what feels right for you with house symptoms. I don't know if that house systems, don't know if that's a cop-out. I know most people use Placidus, but porphyry. I started with porphyry because Kai Patcher uses it. Jeffrey Wolfgreen used it. It seems to really fit well. I think Mark Green uses it too. Mark Jones. It seems to fit really well with evolutionary astrology. Stephen Forrest, though, uses Placidus. So. Okay, the great nephew spoke of above, did his chart reading. There are lots of planets in the sixth and mentioned health stuff. But I did try to say it could just be a hypervigilance about his health, or that he may go into the health field. Oh, well, she's probably sensitive already because of his health issues. So, yeah. So what? I don't think a lot of planets in sixth house necessarily means only health issues there. And it depends what planets are in there, what they're aspecting, things like that. It would also depend how planets affected those planets by transit, I would say too. But generally, you learn by intuition again, you know. Oh yeah, exactly, Kimberly. She says it's a good point not to do chart reading on babies and to be careful how one says something. It's so true. You know, I've decided it's just not a thing I want to do. Unless I could step back and do very basic readings. If I did a baby's or a child's reading now for a friend, I would just I think I would just really talk about the sun, rising, and moon, and keep it really light, and talk about their personality, and maybe how best, you know, if it's clear they're going to be really shy, or to have a tendency to be really shy or introverted, you know, you can look at lighter things like that. Yeah, I don't think you can look, and you can't look at things like the moon's nodes for younger people really, because people aren't even aware of the south node habit, and are not able to start to move beyond their default habit patterns until they probably after the first Saturn return, really. So it might be limiting the market a bit, but I don't like the light and fluffy readings. But if a friend asked me to just, look at my kid's chart, I'd probably just stick to sun, moon, and ascendant and a general, keep it light and fluffy, and go, you know, they're like, my daughter's really strongly Cancerian. You know, she's got sun and multiple planets in Cancer in the eighth house, so which is another private thing. I'd say they're probably going to be really homebody, or love the home and family and want it, but very private and kind of a little bit hard to get them to talk about their feelings. So I would keep it lighter, but generally I won't sell a reading for kids. So yeah. So any other questions? Was that okay with the house? You know, I've had people switch. Like I had my paradigm shift the other week about using which Lilith I used. Maybe I'll have a house shift at some point.
Yeah, can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the house systems, I was whole house system, and then I too watched K Patches, and felt like, yeah, because he talked about how the times he's switched too, and then he does use porphyry now as well. I think, I know this is going to sound a bit funny, because I would have my north node and south node in 12th and 6th, and south in 6th. And at the moment, Pluto's transiting my 6th house. And if it was in whole house, it goes to the 7th, and my north node would be 1st and 7th, if you know what I mean, like it swaps. And so I often get a bit confused about which one would be more aligned with me. But then, because last year I had my big health scare, like I got diagnosed with leukemia, I can see that it probably is the
6th house. And is that?
I still wish I didn't. I know that sounds really weird, but I just sometimes wish it. I'm thinking, no, it's not it. That's not it.
But then you could be having big problems with your relationships if it was 7. So,
I haven't had anything like that for a long time now. I've been separated, with
well,
as
it
my
could be all significant relationships though, not just in 7th house.
yeah. I don't
Mm.
feel like I've had any sort of waves in that way for like 10 years now.
Yeah.
But yet I had the big health thing last year. You see,
Well,
come out of the blue, basically.
to my
Um,
mind, that's 6th
yeah,
house
it
thing. Yeah.
speaks for free.
That's kind of why I've stuck with it, because everything, especially from doing this kind of study when I was learning, I was like, oh, it just worked every time, porphyry
Yeah,
for me.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm not one of those kind who goes, my way's right.
yeah.
I worked with Jenna, who's in this class, and we worked with her whole sign chart for ages because she asked me to. But now she's asked to switch to porphyry all of
Okay,
a sudden.
yeah.
So,
Thanks.
but it's a kind of the same thing about the nodes as well, and Lilith. If you want to use those, if you want to use Lilith as well, because my nodes, I use the true. Yeah, I use the true nodes. I think yes. And anyway, but mine changed sign if I switch to the mean nodes. So
Okay,
so the true node feels right. I think in
okay,
the end you have
yeah.
to go with what feels the most right. So yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Anybody else? So yeah, so I'm just going to rattle on for a minute until see if we got any other questions. But
Can I ask something?
of course, yeah,
Sorry,
please.
I'm doing all the questions.
No, that's all right.
Um, so, did I don't even know how to frame this question. What, like you gave the charts on the houses, like the different um, sort of topic of each house or description of, like
I did
first
in
house
level. I did in
as like
level one.
self-identity or whatever. But when you talk, you really know how to, like you were saying about your daughter, that if she has cancer in the eighth house, she might be quite a private person about her feelings. Like that is just knowledge you learnt over time, because it's really hard to look at a chart and just sort of formulate all that
It is. I
information.
think it is. It's practice, practice, practice.
Okay.
Plus, you think of the nature of the blending of the energies. A lot of astrology is blending. So
Yeah.
if you think about Cancer, they're in a shell. They don't
Yep.
like to have attention to themselves. The Cancer crabs move sideways into the room rather than going like Leo, like I'm here. And,
Yep.
and Cancer tends
I
to,
have Cancer Moon and Ascendant.
oh, there you go. And Cancer tends to like to be in their little domain with fluffy pillows and things like that, especially when they're young.
Yeah.
And then the 8th house is ruled by Scorpio, which is very private and secretive almost. It's described as. So the two watery things together, and she's got a lot in Cancer. I would just look at it and say, oh my God, yeah, she likes her. She's gonna find it very hard to express her feelings. So
Okay.
plus she has Scorpio rising, which is another private, very another one that's hard.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very deep, but they don't like to show it. So,
Yeah.
so
And
Kimberly.
so then, with you, if you were doing a reading for someone, like if my son has a stellium of planets in Capricorn in the first house,
Mhm.
um, but then I would look also at the transits as well,
Yeah.
significant transits,
Well,
not just
it depends how you want to start. I started off just by doing natal charts and just
without transits.
without transits, but I don't.
Okay.
But I no longer really do them because I don't. I think it's not very helpful in the moment because I do more consultational style readings now.
Yeah.
So just having a reading that describes who you are isn't
Well,
you
that I feel that too, actually.
Yeah. But when I do a reading, I will usually start with the natal chart and look at Pluto in the nodes and go into it that way and talk about their soul stuff.
Oh, yeah, I think you mentioned that, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. And
You
and
wanted
then
to,
and that brings in a couple of other bits, and then I go to looking at what's happening now. So
and that's enough. Yeah.
it usually is, and usually that will mean mentioning the sun and the moon and things like that. But it's less prescriptive, going around each bit and saying, well, this person does this and acts
Yep.
this way. You know?
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks for that.
you're welcome. So, Kimberly, do you read cusp sun signs, and what degree would you consider it to be a cusp? I am 27 degrees Scorpio and I feel very Scorpio. I usually read the sun sign as the sun sign, even if it's 0 or 29 degrees. Um, so, and that my daughter again is a really good example. In fact, maybe I should get her chart up and share it. She wouldn't mind. If it's on this software, let me have a look. Okay, I'm going to share my daughter's chart. Oh, bear with me. I've just got to get to screen share. Because I thought she was going to be a Gemini, my daughter. I actually find that people are not really on the cusp of a sign. They just don't know. They just haven't figured out what sign they are yet because of the shifting dates for the switching of the signs. So if you look at this, my daughter is okay. Yeah, we'll move on to your question next time, Barbara. I mean, after I've talked about this. So this is my daughter, and when I talk about her, she's got Sun, Venus, Mercury, Mars, and North Node all in Cancer, and pretty much all in the 8th house, because the North Node is kind of pulled in by her Cancer stellium, and she is very very kind of deep emotionally, and doesn't share very much, very private about her emotions. But look at her degree. She was 0 degrees and she's only 34 minutes into being a Cancerian, but she is very Cancerian. So, really, the only way I might talk about the cusp, Kimberly, is that if she's 0 degrees Cancer and Mercury and Venus were both in Taurus, in Gemini still, because the two are, you know, Mercury and Venus generally travel pretty much with the sun. You know, if they were still in Gemini, I would talk maybe about her being definitely a Cancer sun sign, but she may feel like she has some traits of Gemini because Venus and Mercury. Does that make sense? Yeah, exactly. I think your sun sign is your sun sign too. But you know, I might talk about feeling the other energies because of the other planets. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yay. Okay, Barbara, what's your question? Do you want to talk or type?
I want to talk. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rather a basic question, and I hope nobody's asked it yet, so you're not covering old material.
Nobody's asked about aspects.
I'd like to know, determining an aspect, we look at the degree first, and then if it's, generally speaking, 3 houses away, it's a square, 4 houses away, it's a trine.
I wouldn't go by houses, especially if unless you're using whole signs or things. You go by signs.
Oh, by signs. So you look for the cusp, then anything.
So, for example, let me share again and I'll point.
Okay, thank you, because I have a little trouble with that.
We'll use my daughter's chart as an
Okay.
example. Okay. So, if a planet was trining her sun, it would be that's 120 degrees, which is 4 signs. So I would look to 0 Gemini 1, 0 Taurus 2, 0 Aries, and then I would find 0 Pisces. And if there was anything at 0 Pisces or 4 signs the other way, then it would be aspecting it would be trine her sun. Does that make sense?
Yes. Can you tell me? And then so it would be 3 away for a square,
Square.
and a tile would be 2 away. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I just needed to clarify that because I wasn't doing it right, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's 30 degrees in each sign.
Yeah.
So 2 signs is sextile, 3 is a square, 4 is a trine.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And then 5 signs is that one we haven't really looked at, but it's called a minor one, the quincunx or the inconjunct.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
Actually, I do have another question.
Good. Wendy will be relieved because she was the only one talking. I think Kimberly's at work, so she can't talk, so she's typing.
I guess this one is more, I'm asking for an opinion, because if your rising sign is in the last degrees of the sign, would it be, my rising sign is 27 degrees Cancer. And so it makes my first house look like it's in Leo, but if I do the whole house system, my whole chart looks so different.
Well, look at my ascendant, 28 degrees, 53 minutes, Sagittarius. So I know the feeling. So I'm not sure what your question is, but how I would describe it is that I'm definitely Sagittarius rising, but I also display some Capricorn qualities because I have Capricorn almost entirely. Well, I do have it entirely in the first house.
So would you consider your first house to be in Sagittarius or Capricorn, or just like a blend of the both?
Sagittarius firstly, and then with some Capricorn qualities. Yeah, I would definitely say Sagittarius though.
And then that changes your whole house system as you roll around, actually. I don't know, just the house systems are curious to me. I kind of look at them. In Porphyry, I have Pluto in the first house. In Placidus, it's in the second house. And the whole signs, I just try not to look at whole signs because they don't resonate with me.
They don't really with me. And we did have a bit of a discussion about the house systems, and I think there's arguments for all of them. And whole signs can be useful for if you don't have a birth time and things like that, to not complicate matters if you're trying to do some kind of reading. But I think really you have to pick what feels right for you. I would say I picked Porphyry because Kaipacha used it, and I started with him first when I was learning kind of more formally. Before that, I used Placidus. But when I learned astrology the way I've done it to you, kind of looking at the timing of transits over house cusps and things, Porphyry always worked.
Yeah, I think Porphyry seems to resonate with me as well.
Yeah, I think you have to just really go with your gut. I know some astrologers who are more the researchy type of astrologers would kind of argue with me and say, well, this house system works for this, and this is why mathematically and all that. I go with my gut.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Teresa, you're very quiet.
Right when I'm on another screen. You know what? I have a friend that I grew up with, known her since the 3rd grade, and we all grew up very close in this tiny little awful town. So I know her really, really well. That's the point I'm trying to make. And doing her chart is really interesting. And I'm gonna put together a video where I show, like, her chart's amazing because she has an ascendant and a descendant. Her descendant has her sun on it, exact degree as her ascendant. So that creates this tension
Uh-huh.
along that line, that it's exact, which means, you know what it means as an astrologer, right? When you hit the 90-degree angle,
Uh-huh.
like when a planet hits 90 degrees, it's just, you got to see this. I'm just saying you have to see this because she's up at the 90-degree. She's
Uh-huh.
got Uranus and a black moon Lilith.
Uh-huh.
So this has, her chart alone has progressed my astrologer.
Uh-huh.
I can't find words.
I know what you mean.
Come on. I used to be so great at talking, you know.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, plus, you know, I get a little nervous addressing people, but this is such an amazing chart, and I want to put a video up for everybody and show them like what it ethics comes into it too. And of course, the minute Chris Brennan posts the video, I watch it. Right. And so I saw that immediately, and I've been interested. There's an ethics course that I actually want to take from somebody. I was thinking about that because it covers counseling and stuff. And while I'm doing her chart, you can see how clear it is why we need to know ethics and counseling skills and stuff like that, because her life has changed during those transits. And now what's she supposed to do? Stay in the house if she has a transit going over on these angles? Of course not. You know what I mean? So it's her chart really kind of shows, first of all, it shows how exciting astrology is and how it's absolutely on the nose true. It's a chart for skeptics. I know we don't want to get into that, but I mean, you think of it like this is the chart for skeptics, but it's also like scary. So we have to say, okay, here's how to approach it. Here's what to do next. And anyway.
Oh, I agree.
So,
And
yeah,
you know,
I want to get that and put that in Planetary Magic too.
and if I happen to, you know, convert a skeptic, I'm good with that. I just don't make I don't make it my job to.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, talking about things like that make you go, wow. There was that thing about the paedophiles last week. I was like, the timing of that you could not make up, you know. It's like, whoa. And then my eldest daughter, my other daughter, you guys have been following astrology long enough to know all about the Uranus-Pluto square and its 7 exacts, right? So that were 2012 through whatever dates they were. But anyway, my eldest daughter had Uranus and Pluto on her angles, one on her IC and her ascendant. Like hitting all the angles in that case, but one was conjunct, you know, or 2 of them were conjunct, and she had a horrible teen years because of the Uranus-Pluto square, because it just kept going back and forth over all her angles. It was horrible. And now they've moved on, and she's suddenly like in a different place completely.
That's how I feel. Like growing up, I was like, what was going on? And now I feel a lot better. But then my friend had the opposite life. And you find this with people that had good childhoods. They blow up later, you know. It's not always.
Don't always tell people. Don't tell people they're going to do that. Some people,
you blow up later. No. Right, exactly. There's no rule for it. But I do notice, like, wow, she's just not equipped, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see it. Yeah, that'd be great if you can do that.
I was trying to think of a great question for today, and I just can't think of one. So I feel like a little bit of a failure.
No, you're not a failure. Well, you know, and so unless there's any more questions, I mean, I'm happy to stay on a bit longer, but, you know, next week I am going to look at the eclipses. Prenatal eclipses are quite interesting. I've never used them that much, but they're quite interesting. And the series, and you know, if eclipses hit charts and things, that's in a big way. That's always quite important. And looking at the cycles, and then we'll have the one last week before I travel, and that will be your last chance to ask questions, really. So if I don't get any homeworks in, and at least see that you're kind of beginning to see it, you know, I don't expect you to kind of maybe I should push people more, but I know it didn't work for me, to kind of do a complete interpretation unless you feel like you want to. But I just want to see that you're at least seeing which transits and progressions are significant and what you would choose to look at in a reading.
I do
Well,
have a general eclipse question. I don't understand why it's not an eclipse whenever the moon passes over the sun. Like, what makes it an eclipse? Because the moon passes the sun all the time, and it's opposite the sun all the time.
that's just the way.
Right?
I'd have to find one of Gemini. Brett's probably got a really good video about it.
Right.
But
I didn't know.
it's always an eclipse when it's next to the moon's nodes.
Right. Okay. Everything's got to be lined up like that.
Yes.
You know, like all
Yeah.
the nodes can't be just totally in a different spot.
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it is.
And
So
the closer the sun and the moon are to the moon's nodes, the more total the eclipse is.
right. Because when I'm looking at charts on paper, I don't really know how to spot an eclipse, but I guess it's with the node.
It's the nodes.
Like Adam Summer told me, he's like, "Oh, you're an eclipse baby," and I looked it up, and I am not. There's not an eclipse near my birth. It's in February. I am a January 27, and
I'm gonna look at your chart and see what.
okay, and there was an eclipse like in the beginning of February or something, but I don't think he's right. And I'm thinking, do I know how to spot one? You know what I mean?
Oh, you are actually. So I'll share the screen. Yeah.
Okay.
So you're just after a new moon, it's a partial eclipse because the north node was at 23 degrees. So if we go back to when the new moon would have been just before your birth, so this would have been your prenatal eclipse.
Right.
So I'm just moving it back in time. The new moon partial eclipse, and it's partial because it's like, look, it's 17 degrees away, but that's still an eclipse. Was January the 26th before so I think you do count as an eclipse, yeah.
Huh. But in my ephemeris, I don't really see that. But I think I just have to, I'm confused on something. It's like, and then when I Google like eclipses in 1971, they give one in February, when I Google it. So I'm just really confused. Maybe they only count some of them, and then others they just don't even list because they're really minor. Maybe this was just like very minor.
Yeah, maybe it's because it's 17 degrees away, but I thought that still counted as an eclipse. So, or 16. Yeah, I would have said.
Right.
I see why he says it.
Right, I did too. Like,
Yeah.
when was that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Will I be offering a level 3 class?
Right.
Barbara asks. Probably, but probably not till next year because the rest of the year is crazy. So I will be offering my Venus retrograde class again, which was amazing for those that did it, and that's in October. But otherwise, with the book coming out and things are getting quite busy. So I don't know. We'll see. Oh, you're welcome. But we've still got a couple more weeks, so we'll have those 2 calls. Next week will be at the earlier time, 12 p.m. And I will look at the eclipses a bit and look at that Barbara Brennan book that I talked about, The Eagle and the Lark, and talk about eclipse series because I think you should at least understand the basics of eclipse series and things, and we'll talk more about why. I wonder why that doesn't show up for eclipses for 1971. That's really weird, Teresa. wondering that myself now, or at least when you Google, because I would count that as an eclipse. But, and then the last week.
Class, Louise.
Oh, you're welcome. And the last week, I'm hoping to have some kind of homeworks to review a bit. And I won't, you know me, I'm very kind. I will just kind of go, yes, I would look at that too. Or maybe I would look at this as well, or something like that. That's all I just want to know you're kind of getting it a bit. So, all right. And Teresa, send me your flight meetings, flight details too.
That will be in chat when you check. It's in there now.
Oh, okay.
So when you get off this call and go look, you'll see it.
Yay!
Yay!
Because I intend kind of heading to Trader Joe's, going for something to eat, things like that, and picking people up, so we can all just travel to the house together. So.
Yeah, I'm coming in the morning. They're in Phoenix, so
cool.
And I'm a very good waiter, very, very patient waiter. If I have to wait for a while.
Well, yeah, but we're not just going to sit around for all morning. I figured there's a Trader Joe's near the airport.
Yeah.
We can do bits like that. So, all right. Okay, thank you, everybody.
All right.
And thanks for showing up with questions. Yay. Okay, bye.